Welcome back to Cancer Out Loud, the CancerCare podcast. I'm Christina Monaco, an oncology social worker here at CancerCare. In today's episode, we're highlighting the longstanding partnership between CancerCare and the Triple-Negative Breast Cancer Foundation. Since 2009, the Triple-Negative Breast Cancer Foundation and CancerCare have partnered to ensure that individuals diagnosed with TNBC have access to free psychosocial services and support. Throughout the month of March, every dollar donated to the TNBC Foundation goes directly towards TNBC-specific research, making each contribution especially impactful. Beyond research, there's also some great support resources available. The TNBC Foundation hosts monthly Zoom meetups, including Metastatic Mondays with TNBC Friends, and groups on Tuesdays and Thursdays with TNBC Thrivers. You'll find all the details on the TNBC Foundation website. CancerCare also offers a national online support group specifically for people affected by TNBC, moderated by an oncology social worker. You could sign up right on the CancerCare website. If you're interested in upcoming programs or want to learn more about the services that the TNBC Foundation offers, head to tnbcfoundation.org. And for CancerCare's resources, you could visit cancercare.org. If you'd rather talk to someone directly or you have questions, you could always call the TNBC helpline at 877-880-8622. In this episode, we'll be talking with Caryn as she shares her experience navigating life with triple-negative breast cancer. Our hope is that her story brings you comfort, reminds you that you are not alone, and highlights the support available through our organizations like Triple-Negative Breast Cancer Foundation and CancerCare for you and your loved ones. So welcome, Caryn. Thanks so much for being here today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So excited. So just to get started, tell me a little bit about your background and what brought you here today.
So thank you. So I have very much of a storied health history. I was first diagnosed with early stage hormone-positive breast cancer in 2004. Now, that was about 3 months after my wedding. So I was young, 30 years old. I was, new to the newlywed thing, and we just jumped into hardship, being diagnosed with cancer. I was very lucky. I had an incredible support system, and I did all the things that I was told to do to help with my longevity, to help improve my health overall. And that was a bilateral mastectomy with reconstruction, 16 weeks of chemotherapy.
Oh.
And fast forward 9 years, and the cancer came back. This time it was in my sternum and a little bit in my spine as well. So that was really scary because now, since the cancer left the point of origin, I was now a stage 4 breast cancer patient. And anybody who's hit with a diagnosis like that, even though I had the history from 9 years prior, I believed, and the stats say 70% of people that are diagnosed with early stage, it will not return. But 30% it will. And so I was a part of those statistics. And naturally, I was incredibly scared because the only people I knew, as much as I knew about cancer, the only people I knew with stage 4 had died and had died pretty quickly. And so I, now, because that was 12 and a half years ago, I can say as much as I knew about cancer, there was a lot I didn't know. It was opening up my world. And I spent about 9 years of the stage 4 diagnosis having a similar type of cancer that I had from the get-go, which was considered ER/PR positive, those receptors, estrogen positive and progesterone positive. However, about 3.5 years ago, that all changed. And that was when my cancer had mutated to triple negative metastatic breast cancer. It had grown a bit, not significantly. Now, mind you, these are my words. I think doctors will say remarkable, significant. They all might mean different things, but The cancer itself was not all over my body. This point, it went from being just in my bones to being in the pleura, which is around like the chest wall. There was a lot of liquid that needed to be aspirated, that there was some cancer in there. And then they did do a biopsy with that chest wall, and it did show the triple negative. So that's where we are today. I'm 2.5 years in with triple negative, 12 and a half years since the stage 4 diagnosis, and 21 years since the initial diagnosis.
Mm. And so going through this for such a long time, and you use the word scary, and that's what was coming to my mind, of course. You had already gone through hearing stage 4. Was there any adjustment when you heard triple negative breast cancer?
Yes. Because I have been dealing with cancer for so long, I knew, or I believed, or I was told that ER/PR positive was easier. I'm not sure if that's true,
Mm.
but things I heard. I heard there were a lot more options in terms of treatment for ER/PR positive and not triple negative. And again, I'm not sure that's true either. As you live and you learn, and as time goes on, there are more treatments that are being created. And it's not even just a new drug here, a new drug there. It's about the combination sometimes of drugs. My last treatment that I was on for over 2 years
Yeah.
were two different types of drugs that they put together that existed, but about 6, 7 years ago, they didn't put them together. So research is huge. If any of your friends ask what they can do to help in terms of your longevity, oh, there's a whole slew of things that I can throw out there. However, I have learned how meaningful that putting a little bit of money towards research can really help these labs to come up with more that will help save our lives.
It sounds like really so much of your story is hope. Oftentimes we hear triple negative breast cancer, and you hear in media, on online support groups, or just through stories, a lot of horror stories. But it sounds like you're coming in with really a perspective of resilience, determination, and hopefulness in your journey.
100%. I will tell you that when I was first diagnosed with metastatic, my son was 5 years old. I was crying every day. And we all know when you cry a lot, you get really bad headaches. So you're exhausted because you're going from meeting to meeting. You're overwhelmed because the information you're hearing is incredibly scary. And it's new, even though, like I had said, I had dealt with cancer before. I thought I understood cancer, and I did. And there's so much more to know and to learn. And by the way, everybody's cancer diagnosis is different. So just because I might know of somebody that had something similar, it doesn't always equate. And so I remember being so distraught. And I tend to lean into being a positive person anyway. And I wasn't feeling any of it because the situation I get doesn't warrant it. But I felt so cruddy that I kind of, it's almost like I had a conversation with myself, not literally, but I thought, what can I do so that I don't feel so heavy and dark and miserable?
Yeah.
There is a place for that. And clearly, with my diagnosis, I'm sitting there with a 5-year-old wondering if I'm going to live 4 months or 4 decades.
Mm.
And no one has those answers. So it's very scary and very warranted to feel all those feelings. For me, it just got really hard to put one foot in front of the other when I was so distraught all the time. And so I kind of leaned into things, not anything really deep, but watching comedy instead of drama. Because a lot of drama on, now we'd say Netflix, but then maybe it was just regular TV, was, could make you cry and could give you headaches. And I didn't want more of those. So I watched a lot of Adam Sandler. And I watched just things that I knew would make friends. The show made me laugh. And so I found little ways to help me, like, put a slight bit of ease so that I was able to put one foot in front of the other. And then as time goes on, as I saw treatments working, as I saw, and they don't always work. So you
Uh-huh.
look for something else, and knowing that there's other things out there, and knowing that there are different people and resources to support me going through this journey that has been a huge roller coaster, really makes me believe so strongly in hope, because you don't you don't know what tomorrow brings. Tomorrow you could feel great, or maybe you feel cruddy. And the next day it could be different. And I found that when I surround myself or have access to things that bring me joy, that make me smile, that make me laugh, that helps me get through the day. And that gives me hope that there are going to be forever tomorrows, or maybe not forever, right? But years, perhaps decades, perhaps. I want to believe that the more time I have, the more time the medical community has to come up with new things to help me.
Yeah. Right. And also, it sounds like being able to touch those feelings of sadness, despair, the hard pieces of this journey, but you don't have to live there. Instead, you live in the hope as your baseline, the search for optimism and just, normalcy as your baseline. And you could touch those other pieces without
Yes.
drowning in it. And I wonder, oh, sorry, go ahead. Mhm.
Well, I was going to say, and I get that it is a part of my DNA to lean into the positive. And so I don't want to tell people out there, like, if that's not the way you're built, don't change to be somebody you're not. I
Yeah.
think what I've realized in the years that I've been talking with other cancer patients and survivors and thrivers is that to figure out what's authentic to you. And you don't have to have the most positive spirit all the
Mm.
time or even half the time. But if you have a few things that make you laugh, and you surround yourself by people that make your life easier. And, that is a hard one, because sometimes the people in our lives are triggered by what's going on with us, whether it's they've dealt with it in another way, or they're scared for their own self. And so I've learned through my journey that sometimes I need to take a step back and really think about who I want to spend that time with, because time is energy. And when you're going through uh, cancer treatment, like that energy, if you have more hard energy on you, it just brings you down. It makes you tired. And so, I say to people, just be mindful and you may not realize now, or maybe your friend or relative is amazing when life is great, but when life is hard, maybe you need a little distance.
How did you decide that? And how did you come to terms with these are the people that I trust to disclose and really talk to, and these are the people who maybe can't hold it? What was that journey like for you or process?
It's ongoing.
Mm,
I think it's really about one, knowing who you feel safe with.
mm,
On the same note, there are friends that I've had that I never went there, and I was never vulnerable with them. And then by happenstance, I revealed something, and they were so good.
wow.
I have a dear friend now. She's one of my best friends. Now, she moved to my community at this point several years ago, but at the time, she and I were going to get our nails done when I actually got the call from my doctor about the change, the triple negative change. And because I was waiting for his call, and I was literally leaving for an hour to go get my nails done, and of course that's when he's going to call, I felt like I got to take it, even though I really don't think I'd ever shown any vulnerability to her.
Mm,
And because I have access to my reports and because I've been dealing with this for a long time, I feel like I can read my reports. And even if I think I know it's something I don't want to see, I know I have access to my doctors within a short amount of time. And so I will say that some people, it's probably not good to go in and read those reports. For me, I have often done that. So when he called, I don't even think I said hello. I said, "It's triple negative, isn't it?"
mm,
And he said, "It looks like it." And I started crying because it was a change, because my cancer is now outsmarting my body
right.
and changing from estrogen positive or had to triple negative. And so that was scary for me. And I just cried in the car. And my friend just sat there. And I think she put her hand on my hand and, waited until I was done. And then we sat in the car for a little bit before we went in. I think we did end up getting our nails done. But so that's an instance where I felt close to her. Our families did a lot together. I just hadn't really gone deep with my fears. And because that situation arose, now I know she's so good to go to in times like that. And so I say to people that sometimes you might want to take a chance. And if that person is not receptive or doesn't give you what you need, and by the way, I don't think we always know what we need, but our gut oftentimes, if you're having a conversation with someone and you feel really uncomfortable, well, maybe it's because it's an uncomfortable situation. Maybe it isn't the person, but if you have continual conversations and your gut, like it just feels off and you're not feeling better, then maybe that's your body telling you,
Yeah.
look for somebody else.
Mhm. In this situation and cancer in general, it was almost like a forced vulnerability. And it was a moment that you had to change your approach. You had to be vulnerable in that moment. And I know that as a mom and a professional, probably a lot has changed where you might need more rest. You're not necessarily able to do all the things that you were able to do before. Can you tell me what that has looked like for you and kind of relearning or unlearning what wellness, what rest and energy looks like to you?
So that has changed significantly for me over the course of the years. I love to laugh at myself and say it wasn't my first diagnosis with cancer that I actually leaned into healthy living. It was my second.
Mm.
I went back to my old ways after my first diagnosis, which was being a workaholic. I loved to work. I joked around I didn't have hobbies because I loved to work so much. I thought that I was healthy because I grew up during the fat-free craze, and so my lunches at work were oftentimes out of the vending machine. It wasn't Doritos, it was baked Lay's. It wasn't a Coca-Cola, it was a Diet Dr. Pepper. And so all these things are very highly processed. Were not really giving me any dense nutrition. But I didn't care because it didn't I didn't understand how important it was to how
Mm.
I felt. Now, after my stage 4 diagnosis, I felt life was out of control and I wanted to do something to help. And while there are so many, I mean, you just, open up your phone and there's so many dissenting views on what's healthy, what's not, what can help, what can't. My question to my doctors would often be, do you think this would help? And many times they'd be like, I don't know if it would help, but it won't hurt. And if they said it wouldn't hurt, then I would try it.
Mm.
That went from I was vegan for a while. I did a whole foods plant-based diet. I will tell you when I ate a lot more vegetables, no Diet Dr. Pepper, I felt so much lighter, and I
Mm.
kinda say, "Duh." I was drinking probably 48 ounces of carbonation a day, so obviously I was gonna feel a little bloated, but, it didn't equate at the time because I wasn't thinking about it. So my journey into wellness really started with that initial stage 4 diagnosis. I was pretty rigid. And I was okay with it because I felt like this was what I could control.
Mm.
I will say, after 12 and a half years living with metastatic disease, My habits have changed. I don't know if I'd say significantly. I still believe in a whole foods, plant-based diet. That being said, over the course of time in the last 2.5 years that my treatments have been much more toxic and
Right.
severe. I get that drinking a green juice in theory could be good, but I couldn't stomach it. And I think
Mm.
that is a challenge when you're dealing with cancer, especially metastatic cancer. Like my first journey with cancer, I was in chemo for 16 weeks. And so at some point, my body was able, to kind of heal itself. Now I finished a treatment that was stopped working this past November. I was on it over 2 years, so I had a good run. And now I'm on a different treatment. And so my body is not able to recoup several months because I'm stage 4 and I need to go back to it. So I better understand now the bigger limitations you have with harsher treatment. And I know that exercising and moving your body, it's good on so many levels. And sometimes I push myself to just get outside and walk the dog. That being said, sometimes I just got to sit in bed. And so I think the biggest growth for me, because I was somebody that believed in health and fitness before all this, even though to my point, baked lays isn't really healthy, but I understood it, was the mindfulness component
Mm.
and how amazing that can be when you were talking about kind of like that being more present, living in your life differently is really how I kind of took what you're saying. I have learned in the last 12 years, once I started to lean into various mindfulness practices, that I actually know my body now much better than I did before the stage 4 cancer. I moved a mile a minute. I was always busy. I liked being busy. I did not take time to stop and pause. And there's so much growth I think, in ourselves when we can figure things out on our own. And what I mean by that is like, not necessarily my treatment, but how many times do we say, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do. Or I'm not sure on XYZ, whatever that might be. I have learned, I used to talk it out. If I had a question, if I had a problem, I'd call my mom. I'd call my besties. I would call various people to try and figure out what I wanted to do. The space that I have been forced to have with the cancer and the fact that I've tried different, to me, mindfulness modalities, like they could be meditation, they could be leaning into gratitude, it could be journaling, it could be seeing a therapist, social worker, whatever, that I've found that I know myself better, which is helpful with my treatment to be able to say, I felt off. Last few weeks, I felt off. And it's helpful with kind of my mental wellness in the like, I heard some bad news about a friend yesterday, and I really, it turned my day around, and I didn't force myself to do all my to-dos. And as much as I love spending time with my son, and he's a teenager, so driving with him places is where I get the best of him oftentimes. But I even stood back from that because I just really, that news shook me hard.
Yeah.
And I gave myself the space to just be,
Mm.
kind of work through it if I needed to, or just be, rather than I think in the past, I just pushed, and I moved forward. And then when I had to make a decision, it was oftentimes hard because I would want to go get the buy-in from other people and get their advice. Whereas now I think I've learned to trust myself, or I know how my body feels. So when it feels a different way, because I've given myself the space and time.
Yeah. And as a person who does tend towards the positive, I'm sure that those moments when you feel the negative are really uncomfortable. And so to be able to have that mindfulness of, okay, I feel this way. And I know that it'll move through me if I just give it the space to, is probably a really helpful tool that you've learned through this process.
Yeah, it really is.
I also wonder how community has influenced that. And when I say community, you've spoken about family members or friends, but also the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation community, your medical care team. What has that looked like? What have those relationships been like?
I feel very grateful, blessed, throwing every positive word about the medical community I've dealt with.
Mhm.
I, I want to say quickly that as much as I love them, I still really believe in second opinions. And even to this day, I know that when we all get diagnosed, it is exhausting. And the last thing you want to do is go get a second or third opinion. That being said, the last two times I've changed treatments, I've it was a conversation with another doctor that was maybe put in the notes that came back to my oncologist that opened up another conversation.
Mhm.
So I believe that someone told me a long time ago, Caryn, if you want to, I'm a marketing and media person. I'm not a doctor. Find that community, that medical team that can help you heal or live through it, whatever the word might be. So I do feel very blessed that I am surrounded by a ton. I live on the East Coast. There's a lot here. That being said, for those of you that don't live on the East Coast, there are other like hospitals, at least through this country, that might do telehealth second opinions. And so I encourage people to look into that. They have been very, call them a community to me. The other community is, in this case, like the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation. When I thought that this was probably going to be triple negative, because we like had an inkling about it before I got the results, there's a woman that I met. Her name is Melissa Berry. She is so bright and she's a ray of sunshine. And I connected with her online because we both had these platforms where we shared, for me it was about health and wellness and taking small steps towards health, happiness, and taking care of yourself, whether you were a cancer survivor or not. And she was very into fashion and cancer. She was a triple negative survivor, breast cancer survivor. And so when I had an inkling, I was like, I don't know her, but I know her from social media. I'm going to reach out to her. And as soon as I reach out to her, she's like, let's get on the phone. I'm going to talk you through this. I'm on the board of this foundation. They'll be so helpful for you. And so she introduced me to some people and the resources that they have. And, to me, some of it is resources, information. When you have a new diagnosis, the internet is so vast. We can get lost in a lot of different bits of information that may or may not be true. And I think in today's day and age, that's what's really scary is that you might have an influencer that you love and that you believe in so much of what they say, but I really have been very mindful of the sources of where I get my information. And so the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation is sourced incredibly by, their board are full of doctors and surgeons, and those that are really connected in the breast cancer community. And then they have partnerships as well, which, as you know, they have a partnership with CancerCare. CancerCare was amazing to me early in my journey, where I called the free social worker hotline because when I was first diagnosed with metastatic, I reached out. I wanted a neutral source that could help me talk through how to handle it with my child. And I was getting all sorts of information, pressure from family and friends about doing it a certain way. And I was trying to figure out what was right for me and my husband and our family. And so I love the fact that here was a free resource of, a credentialed social worker that was helping me through. And now I know that there's this partnership with the Triple Negative Foundation. Like, you may want to, when you get diagnosed or you know somebody that's diagnosed, have a conversation with somebody that has, that's schooled for this, that knows how to help you or give you ideas of how to handle the situation. They're not going to tell you what to do. Like, no one told me what to do, but they opened up with whether it was the questions that or the support to help me feel like I could manage. And so I think when we're talking about community isn't just the people in your neighborhood. It's not just your family near or far. It's the way you can reach out to people. And I think that, there's a beauty to what's available online. I think sometimes it's scary. I think we all know, and if we don't know, we have to remind ourselves that sometimes you go into these chat groups and there's a lot of information. Some can be valuable, but a lot of times people need to vent or they have a question and they're scared. And so they go because it's late at night and they can. And that can be amazing. And it also can be dangerous, which is why I like what the Triple Negative Foundation and what CancerCare has to offer is these resources with true credentialed support if you need it. Now, with the Triple Negative Foundation, I have been, honored to be able to help out and host some of their support groups. And it's really a beautiful thing because this organization is global. And sometimes I'll come on and I'll be like, okay, happy Friday, everyone. And then someone will be like, I'm in Australia, it's Saturday.
Oh,
And I kind of,
wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah, really high reach,
there
long
have,
reach.
there have been a number of people from Australia, not the same ones,
Wow.
so they're usually people from the UK, people from all around the country. And what's really interesting is I'm hosting it and I'm learning so much because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's the little things that your doctors might know, but you may forget to ask, or maybe they haven't had that experience trying something new that somebody else did. Maybe my hospital doesn't offer it, but another one nearby would. And so it's interesting. Every support group that I've been on is a little different because different people show up. Sometimes we talk about the wins. Sometimes we talk about what's bothering us. Sometimes we talk about questions that we have and you throw out questions. There's really no rhyme and reason. There are, as I think you mentioned at the top of the interview, there are certain support groups that are just for metastatic breast cancer, triple negative thrivers. Versus some that are anybody open that's been touched with triple negative or as a caregiver to somebody with triple negative. So I do like that there is, because I think where you are in your journey, sometimes you don't want to hear from somebody
Yeah.
with a different diagnosis because you're just not ready to process it yet. There's nothing right or wrong about it. It's just where they are in their journey.
Yeah. And there's a lot of safety too, to know that you're talking to somebody who really gets it. Just feeling heard and understood, and not just feeling that way, but actually being heard and understood. This is such a unique circumstance to be in. And so there is an element of comfort knowing I'm going to a place where these people understand what I'm talking about. And like you had said about friendships before, that's not a given necessarily. Even if you have the best friends in the world, the best family in the world. And so to be able to really kind of have this as a touch point can be just such a safe foundation for then going on and facing something like triple negative breast cancer.
There's also something you just brought up, something that I've never really thought about.
Mm.
And there is something very powerful about it's not that these are anonymous friends. They are, but they're not. I'm not going to necessarily see them in the day to day.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily going to go see them at treatment. There's no expectation on me to do more or less, or for anybody to do more or less. Now, there is a woman that I met. I actually believe I met her outside of the Triple Negative Foundation. And then when I saw she was involved, I've gravitated towards her. We also live in the same state. So I like I love our friendship, and if we both have kids, and if things were different, maybe I'd say, oh, I might hang out with her more. And that's same with the Melissa Berry I was talking about. That, but we're all really busy, and so we're dealing with life outside of a cancer life as well. But there is something I think powerful about knowing that it's um it's easier to be vulnerable, I think,
Hmm.
when it's a group of people that understand, want to support you, and that you don't necessarily have to go back and see tomorrow.
Yeah. There's less of a requirement to explain yourself and less of a requirement of almost mutuality. Like you want to limit yourself because you know that you're going to see this friend. You don't know how they're going to
Yeah.
respond to it. And so there's a level of responsibility in that maybe you feel free from in these
Yeah.
circumstances. What would you say to a caregiver who might be listening? How would you encourage them to support a person with metastatic breast cancer?
This might be the marketing person in me that says know your audience.
Mm,
But I would say really try and understand, just because I love fanfare and I love to be loved, uh, you know, somebody else that was going through this may not want the attention. They
yeah.
may not want to tell people. And so, really take a moment to think about, whoever you're caregiving for, what can really make their life easier. And I also think sometimes we don't know. You throw your hands up in the air, like life is going crazy, is listen and watch. And if you see that, like we all think, oh, you want to give food. I will say that for people that know me, know that my kid has a peanut allergy, and that for the longest time I was vegan and ate mostly like, wholesome foods, whereas my husband would eat meat, but not red meat. That's a lot of detail there. So for people to bring over casseroles and nice meals that they made or bought out, it wouldn't necessarily get eaten. But for my family, Uber Eats gift certificates uh, were great because we can go to a place of our choice or three different places and get food. And so, try to get to know. And if I mean, you hopefully know the person that you're caregiving for, but watch them in this hard time, and also come to the table with suggestions,
Mm,
because maybe the patient wouldn't be like, I'd really love a cleaning lady 2 times a week. And I know with me, I don't want to ask my friends to pay for a cleaning lady or for them to come clean my house 2 times a week. But if someone showed up and said, hey, I have a cleaning lady, she's willing to come 2 times a week, just want to make sure you're okay with it, but it's all set if you want to, that's great.
mm-hmm.
If you want, a lot of times we have kids, it's the making sure they're okay, taking them, depending on their age, to go do something age appropriate with the kids, all the kids together, so the kids have a distraction. And so I hope that answered the question. It's
Yeah.
hard because each person is really different. I think continually being there, and even if it's like, hey, I haven't talked to you in a few days, you don't need to call me back. However, I'm headed to Whole Foods. If you want something, text me in the next hour. I'll get it for you. And with cancer, especially metastatic, but even any stage you're at, it's a journey. And it doesn't just end when the treatment ends. And for metastatic folks, we're always in it. So the showing up, and we get that caregivers need to live their life too. So it's not meaning beyond their beck and call at all the time, but staying in touch, not just for the really, really hard, dramatic part, but throughout.
Yeah. Having somebody really just to be attentive to what your
Yeah.
needs are and think ahead so that it takes a little bit of the weight off of you to need to consider what you need when you're also
Yeah.
considering, okay, well, I have a doctor's appointment and treatment and my son has to go to practice. It's helpful to have somebody to kind of just think ahead for you
Yes.
and really be there for the long haul. I'm kind of shifting gears here, but thinking about meaning in all of this, because you have brought up so many beautiful things that have come from your cancer journey. And I'm always so mindful and cautious to say silver lining because that doesn't resonate with a lot of people. I do say a silver lining is silver because the cloud is gray. So I want to acknowledge that it's not just, oh, this is
Thank
great
you.
because good things come of it. But what meaning have you pulled from this experience?
I've pulled meaning in a lot of different ways. The stage 4 diagnosis really made me, I had left my corporate job a year before it. So as much as sometimes people think, oh, I left my corporate job because of stage 4, I really didn't. I left it to go to grad school.
Mm,
And I was a year into the program. And there's a lot of good things about it. Interestingly, I wasn't as passionate about it as I thought I'd be. So when they came to me, I wanted to stay in grad school because I wanted to finish. 'Cause, in my head, I'm not a quitter. My husband and my advisor were like, nope, you just got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. You can always come back to us. You've got 7 years. And by the way, even if it goes beyond 7 years, you've an extenuating circumstance. So figure out how to take care of yourself. We don't want you thinking about this. So, but it was very weird for me to, after you go through all the appointments to figure out what you're going to do, then you're on a treatment path.
mm,
And then I was just there. I didn't have all the appointments anymore. I was on the treatment path that I was supposed to be on. I didn't have grad school. I didn't have my corporate job. And I wasn't used to having all that time. And so I had been doing all that research on wellness because I had, some of the assets from grad school that I was able to look at things a little differently and closer. Uh, I was able to like gain a lot of knowledge. And then I sat there, I'm like, what do I do with it?
mm,
I tell friends about that. You should write, you should this. So I decided that I was going to take some of the skills that I already had. I worked in media. I understood media. I wrote so much, granted, they were presentations for the corporate world, and that I would build something around taking better care of yourself. Because everything I learned, even though it was helping me with stage 4 cancer, could really help other people because, like, healthy habits can help us all, if not feel better, even look better. I thought it was wild that my energy was so great as I was onto this new treatment.
mm,
And I had been dealing with such stress, but because I had been eating and my body wasn't used to eating all those vegetables, I was drinking so much water and my body was not used to drinking water that I actually physically felt very different and felt better. And that was pretty cool to me. And so I thought, if this can happen to me with stage 4, it could happen to other people. And so over the course of the last 12 years, how I have helped out, given back has looked like it's really evolved. It started out with wellness, and then I really wanted to give back more to the cancer community. And so when I wrote a book, a portion of the proceeds go to a foundation of a dear friend started. And with that, I felt like I was able to give my knowledge because the hospitals would give my name out, especially in 2004 when I was diagnosed, in 2005 and 2006. There wasn't the internet where you could go reach out to people. So the hospitals would give my name out and I would talk to people, but that doesn't scale. I'm one person. So I felt like writing a book is that few hour conversation. And then any of the money I made could go back, or a portion of it could go back to the foundation. So I felt like I was able to do good on many layers, and it felt really natural for me. And so the things I've done have evolved, and the book is Happiness Through Hardship. And when I was out doing some like book events, I had people come up to me and say, I don't have cancer. I read it because I'm a caregiver to somebody, but I'm going through this hardship. And I think that's what we learn through our journeys. Like my hardship journey is metastatic triple negative breast cancer, but other people have hardship in their lives too.
Yeah.
And so much like, yes, we are talking now to this community. Um, but the crazy thing in life is, if we're blessed and lucky enough to live a longer life, other things happen in life too.
Mm.
And so, like, just because I have cancer doesn't mean other things aren't going to happen. And so I feel like having some of these wellness tools, like I told you, for me, it started with food and exercise, but it really evolved to having a mindfulness practice that worked for me. And I know like there might be people listening now that are like that doesn't work for me. I say try again, because I remember thinking, oh, meditation. That's like, I grew up in the 80s. Like, that's people sitting on mountains and being all woo woo. Well, I mean, times have changed. It is much more mainstream now, first of all. But also, when I started doing guided meditation, which I thought was ridiculous, the first time I had my stage 4 scans after the original diagnosis, I went into the scan so nervous, but all of a sudden I started saying to myself, imagine that I'm at my happy place on Walnut Beach, looking out into the shimmering water. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's the lady on the guided imagery that's telling me to like be at Walnut Beach. And so it actually worked for me, and I like pushed back. Now, I will say in recent years that gratitude is something that I've really leaned into. It really kind of plays to who I am, but it wasn't something that was always there.
Mm.
It really took a silly game that I got a gratitude journal from a speaking engagement I was at. And I came home, I showed it to my son. He was 9 at the time. We laughed. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. So we sat up in bed and he had to tell me what he was grateful for. I wrote it down, and it didn't work because we stayed up too late. The light was on. He didn't get to sleep. So we changed it. We called it the grateful game. We'd lie in bed with the lights off. I had like a timer and be like, okay, you have 2 minutes. Actually, I always had to start because he'd always one up me. So if I had 9 things I was grateful for, he'd have 10, so he could win every time. But that being said, what I noticed, like any habit, is when you do it day to day, it becomes regular. So I would look around my day to see like what's going on today that I can tell Kyle at night,
Mm.
that we're grateful for. And, so I could stump him, or so I would come up with something, because it would always be about the day or the day before. And that's what I think can be powerful about, call it my gratitude game, or whatever your gratitude practice is. It's not necessarily about, oh, I'm so grateful I have this house. Well, I am grateful that I have a house to live in, and shelter and food. But, when you're having a really bad day, sometimes that stuff doesn't move the needle. So sometimes for me, it would be about, and I've said this before, if people, listen to me on the podcast, is I'm grateful for days of our lives. I'm grateful for, the local coffee shop that makes me an almond milk latte. I'm grateful for, this lipstick that is non-toxic, that I like, and that has lasted me a long time. Like, these are silly little things, but they do put a smile on my face. And then when you share it with somebody, it just it kind of brings the why in.
Yeah.
And so I have noticed in the last several years of my cancer situation or journey that I have very much been like leaning into gratitude. Even when I have a bad day or a bad diagnosis, there'll be an and there.
Yeah. I feel like it's a reminder that the grass grows where you water it, and you have watered
It's
your
true.
gratitude practice, and not only for yourself, you have those tools, so you use those tools, but as much as you use your village, you are equally a villager. And so creating
I
that
like
book
that.
and being a part of the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation and hosting these Zoom meetups, you're bringing your tools and you are watering this community as you go along. Mm. in the last few
Wow.
minutes that we have together, I wonder, what would you say to a person who is new to the community, who is just diagnosed and starting off their journey?
There are a few things I'd say. First of all, you are not your diagnosis. So, you know, historically, back in the day, triple negative was seen as the most aggressive kind. I have been living with it for 2.5 years, and knock on wood, it seems to be growing slowly. So on paper, I could be scared, but in reality, so I want people to realize that they're not their diagnosis and they're not somebody else's diagnosis.
Hmm.
So as much as I really believe in hearing the success stories, and with my first diagnosis when it was all so new, I would say to people, I don't want to hear anything, just success stories. But that also came from me, like, from my business standpoint. You look at success stories to help model and things. So that was important to me. I think I'll go back to what you were talking about at the beginning about having hope. I think in today's day and age, there's so much research going on that's coming up with new treatments. Now, for those that know, there's all sorts of these symposiums where the doctors meet up and they talk about trials and they talk about things that are working and not working. And, I know the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation will cover that. They'll send people to them and they'll come back, and there's resources on the site so we can learn about whether it's a clinical trial or what's new going on in that space. So, if you were newly diagnosed, I'd say, be careful with what you read because you're very vulnerable and raw, but there's so much hope out there.
Thank you so much, Caryn. And as a final plug, we have the services. Like you had said, it's available. Those communities are out there. The Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation, please reach out. Find us on the website, tnbcfoundation.org, or call 877-880-8622, and find us at CancerCare as well, cancercare.org. But I'm so grateful to have had you here. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing hope with others. And
Thank you so
yes,
much for having me. I'm so lucky to have had the people in my community and around me to help me be who I am.
awesome. You're the best. Thank you, Caryn. Thanks for tuning in to Cancer Out Loud, the CancerCare podcast. CancerCare is the leading national nonprofit organization providing free professional support services, including resource navigation, cancer-focused counseling, support groups, educational resources, and financial assistance to anyone affected by cancer. You can visit us online at cancercare.org or call our toll-free Hope line at 1-800-813-HOPE. That's 1-800-813-4673 to speak with an oncology social worker or Hope Line specialist.